apologies for absence first, please.
Apologies from Councillor Oswell and substituting is Councillor Nelson.
Welcome. Any declarations? No. Minutes of the meeting, which should be something or other in December, 6th of December. Everyone can take those, okay? Yeah. There are no matters notified in advance or as urgent, but the agenda has been subject to substantial revision since it was published, with items 6, 7, 8, 9 and 12 having been withdrawn for various reasons, which leaves us with a modest agenda to consider: no petitions. There are 2 enforcement matters in Part 2. The remaining 4 items are in Part 1. And that's all there is. Now, I will just double check. We only have one member of the public down within our order. Do you have an interest in a particular item?
No, I was just double checking. Thank you very much that the items taken off have been actually taken off, because I didn't have an email to tell me that. All right,
but the one you were looking for is taken off.
It has been taken
right.
off.
Okay. So there is no member of the public with an interest in this particular agenda. Have a good evening. You can always stay, but yeah, I'm sure you've better things to do. In that case,
thank you very much. Wouldn't mind my dinner.
Right. In that case, right. In that case, without further ado, I'm going to move to item 10, 57 Copsewood Way, which is a variation involving one more dormer. I hate to ruin the officer presentations.
So this application relates to a detached house located in the Copsewood area of special local character. That's the local area character there. That's the site marked in red. Planning permission was approved in June of last year for the demolition of the existing dwelling and erection of a replacement 2-storey 5-bed detached house with habitable roof space to include 2 front dormers and 1 rear dormer. This application seeks to vary that permission by introducing a 3rd dormer to the front. So that's the front elevation there. Unfortunately, it's very faint, but there were marked in green. They show the position of the original front dormers, so I've moved the 2 outer ones a little to the side to make room for this 3rd one in there. There's absolutely no impact on neighbouring amenity, and conservation are happy with the impact on the appearance of the building, and we're recommending approval. Thank you.
Councillor Higgins doesn't like it. Remember, we are one more dormer is all we're arguing about.
Yeah, I know, but we agreed the other dormer, and now it looks like a blooming mansion. And this is the one I remember that has blocked the lighting of the neighbour property. And I really think we are breaking some law by blocking light. But anyway, but never mind. I don't see the point. You know, why don't they do it in the first place? Because if it did in the first place, we wouldn't have accepted it. So, you know, I'm against it. Totally.
Any other views on this one?
Yeah, you obviously can't take part.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I move for officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
I second that one.
In favour, please clearly show. Thank you. And 1 against, or 1 abstention? Right. 3 with 1 abstention. Right, thank you very much. We move on. Item 11, Cornerways Green Lane.
Thank you, Chair. This site is currently occupied by a large detached white rendered 2-storey building on a generous corner plot on the junction of Green Lane and Rickman West Road. Planning permission was granted in October of last year for the change of use of the dwelling to a children's nursery. That permission was restricted the number of children attending to 30. This application seeks to vary the condition that restricted the numbers of children to allow up to 60 children to attend. The principle of the use of cornerways for a day nursery has been established by the existing permission, and the main determining issues therefore are considered to be the impact on traffic and parking and the impact on neighbouring amenity. With regards to neighbouring amenity, the application does not seek to vary a condition 4 of the planning permission, which restricted the opening hours till 8 in the morning till 6 at night, Monday to Friday, and not at all on Saturday or Sunday. Additionally, condition 5 of the planning permission restricts use of the garden to between 9 and 6, with no more than 12 children using it at any one time. That will be unchanged by this application. Condition 7 requires submission of a noise management plan, and that remains a requirement. So we're satisfied that with those conditions, the increase in children won't create any significant additional adverse amenity impacts. So that takes us to highways. As a result of discussion with officers, the applicant has submitted an amendment to the scheme that allocates 5 of the 9 car parking spaces on site for the dropping off and picking up of children within the site using access off Green Lane, so children can be dropped off in safety. According to the information supplied by the applicant, only 4 staff will drive to the existing site. And it's an existing nursery that's relocating, so they know that. Officers are seeking a travel plan through a Section 106 agreement. The applicant has already submitted a draft 29-page travel plan. Whereas this indicates a willingness to provide a suitable travel plan, officers will need to negotiate changes to the submitted travel plan before it can be agreed. However, it does show a willingness on the part of the applicant to enter into discussions with the council on that subject. The nursery has also stated that they're willing to enter into a unilateral undertaking that will have an agreement with staff not to park on street, and that disabled staff will be given priority on the allocation of staff parking spaces. And subject to these measures, the scheme is considered acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and heads of terms set in the report. I will just quickly take you to the I overshot. Site layout, which I just want to show you where the traffic will come in here. So that's where the 9 parking spaces originally proposed. They were all going to be allocated to staff. This amendment allocates 5 of those for parents dropping off and picking up children. Thank you.
Hang on, I think the head of planning wants to come in, and I've got hands everywhere on this one.
Just to clarify, this application, in terms of the addendum sheet, the full Section 106 agreement is set out on page 2 of the addendum sheet, and the part of the reason this is considered acceptable is only because of the heads of terms in the Section 106 agreement, and because of, I think it's condition 8, which also covers highways matters. I'll just double check.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a forest of hands. I got Councillor Castle was first, so I'm going to start. No, well, that's the nature of the game.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Thank you, Chair. Basically, just wanted to clarify on the car parking. I know you said 9 spaces there for the staff as well as the dropping point. Is that correct?
Originally 9 were in the original permission. 9 it was all for staff, but this permission amends that so that 4 will be retained for staff parking, which is the number of staff that currently drive to the existing nursery that's relocated here, and 5 will be reserved for parents dropping off and picking up children.
Okay, can I just lead to another question, please? May I ask how many staff there are going to be in that nursery, please?
I think it's the number.
13 staff if it goes up to 60 children.
Okay, so my concern is if there are 13 staff, right, we have total of 9 spaces of car parking. We are saying we are going to allocate 4 for the staff and 5 for the dropping point. Where will the other staff park their vehicles?
There's 2 points on this. The simple answer does link to the travel plan, but if I perhaps take back a step. So the first application was for 30 children. I know it might seem slightly odd to a committee that a relocated nursery sought planning permission for 30 children is now seeking planning permission for 60. We are advised that it was an agent error regarding the first application, but what we know as a fact is that the existing nursery does have 60 children at Wetherby House that we understand the lease is terminated at the end of March. So I don't know why they applied for 30 previously, but we do know that it's a 60 child. We have details from Ofsted, for instance, concerning that nursery. So what isn't the revised transport assessment with this application references some of the real-time data, some of the real data that relates to the existing nursery, and that's where the 4 staff who drive to work is referenced from, if that helps.
Okay, we'll see what else. We'll see what else comes out in a moment. No doubt we'll come back to that point. I have a feeling. Councillor Morgan, then Councillor Ducey, then Councillor Higgins, and then Councillor Flynn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do have issues with this. Rickmansworth Road, Green Lanes, is a very, very busy junction. You have 2 lanes of traffic from Green Lanes onto Rickmansworth Road. You have 2 lanes of traffic from Rickmansworth Road heading towards Rickmansworth, and is controlled by 1 set of traffic lights. During rush hour, you will get a queue of traffic from Rickmansworth, from this junction down to the Iron Bridge, and up Green Lanes right up into almost to the High Street. To then turn around and say, well, we're now going to have 60 children being dropped off on that particular corner is going to be a complete nightmare, and we're just opening ourselves up to accidents. When the applicant turned around and said there will be no on-street parking, they can't park on those streets anyway. It's double yellow lines. So, you know, when they say we're not going to park on the streets, well, they can't anyway. I'm sorry, officers, I can't go with your recommendations on this.
We'll hear everybody out, and then I'll bring in the highways officer. I think that's probably where I'll go with this one, because I have a feeling we may go the same issues more than once. Councillor Ducey, you were next.
I take the point that currently there are 60 kids there, but I also know this corner, and it seems that if they're somehow doing it at the moment without causing accidents, it's probably not the most responsible thing to do to say, okay, well, let's see how it goes next time around. I remember the conversation about this last time, and the phrase I used previously was, this is going to squeak through, and we were talking about 30 children. So we're doubling that number, and the idea of 5 parking spaces, maybe somehow they've made it work at the moment, but maybe it also looks like Mad Max Fury Road in that car park.
Bear in mind that the existing building isn't on a junction. The one they're coming out of is not on a junction.
Right. So okay, yeah, because I was going to say, in which case I would like to refuse.
Councillor Flynn, then Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Slightly in 2 minds on this, because I do take on board the comments made by my 2 colleagues, but I also think one has to consider the fact that this is within easy walking distance from Norfolk Tube, and it's also quite close to the bus lane routes serving sort of northward. So people accessing this nursery would certainly, I think, be able to do so without driving necessarily. So slightly in 2 minds, I have to say. I'm not going to come down on one side, but no.
Councillor Higgins.
I think we should just refuse it, really. We agreed. I'm not going to mess around about it. We agreed with 30 children, and I had my reservations then. This with 2 accesses onto 2 very, very busy roads at that time of day. The traffic is just going to cause even more trouble than it's worth. I use that road every morning, and it's just absolutely, everybody's either trying to go around the back or avoid this junction if possibly they can. So that's my view on it.
Maybe heading in that direction as well from her earlier questions. Anybody else want to come in on this one before I ask for some? Go on, Councillor Graham, and then I'll take Councillor Moores.
I'm just going to make one minor point. We are actually asking to delegate this, and I don't think it's very clear from the point that our lead has indicated. We would need to know how these people are arriving there, even though we accept there's a railway station. I think there's not clarity on that point.
So you're not comfortable either, right? Okay, Councillor Graham. I'm just trying to get the numbers in my head just to see where this is going.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable either.
One on the fence and nobody else.
Previously, it would appear that there weren't arrangements for dropping off the children in that front car parking area, which there will be now. and I would like to know whether we have some sort of history of how that's been handled.
We don't, because it doesn't exist at the moment. So it's a new version of an idea.
So are there? It's not being used at all at the moment.
It's a house at the moment.
Oh, I see. In that case, I have even greater reservations.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask another question. Because at the moment we have an approval for 30, which is there on the table, and that is the default position. I sense from members that a 60 is hitting some big problems at the moment. Would members, and it's not on the table before us, but it is an option to defer, if the applicant reduced that to 45 or something in the middle, would we be more comfortable, or are we saying 30 was really what we really wanted?
Sorry, Chairman, 30 was the limit for us, I think, well, for me anyway. I mean, I didn't agree with 30, to be quite honest. But
you went with it?
But I went with it because it was one of those ones, well, okay, I believe in free business and commercials and stuff like that, so I'm not really a thing, but to have that amount and to be slightly, I don't mind to be disrespectful, but to be slightly naive that people actually in Northwood actually walk anywhere is pretty rare.
Councillor Morse.
I just think my point is that I think if it was negotiations to take place, it should come back to this committee and not be delegated. That's the one.
No. Well, it would have to, but I think committee. The way I'm sensing the mood at the minute is people are about to sling this back totally. In other words, it's going to be overturned for a refusal in a moment on the grounds that we're not happy with the highway safety. I'm taking it, Councillor Nelson. Can you put your microphone on to make sure we capture this on the YouTube if it's working?
Concern is with the amount, the member of staff only having 4 staff parking. Surely most staff will be coming in by car. Yeah. So how will they accommodate all that?
The applicant's argument is that their existing staff, only 4 of them drive, but that is the position with the current staff. But that's the applicant's argument. I've got that one. I'm pretty clear where we are here, Councillor Flynn. Have you come down off the fence yet? Or
well,
you're still on the fence?
I think actually that's a pretty weak argument because quite often, and I have some personal experience of dealing with nurseries, quite often their staff are quite young, so quite a lot of those staff probably, may end up driving. So I don't think you can say categorically because 4 drive at the moment, that's always going to be the case.
No.
And there's often a high turnover of staff as well at these organisations.
I think that's a very fair point. We're accepting it on what there is now. Officers are obviously in conflict to my right, but I to attempt to offer us some assistance and help. There are some fairly strong views, which I suspect are unanimous. But
yes, Chairman.
I'll
start with the issue raised by Councillor Morgan. That there will be 60 kids being dropped by car. The current nursery, which is just a few yards away on Green Lane, the data supplied by the transport statement says that currently 60% come by car, the other 40 by other sustainable means. And the travel plan applies both to the parents bringing the kids as well as staff. It also advises that 80% of the parents live within 800 meters of the nursery. So there is scope within the travel plan for setting targets, reducing the car trips, both for staff as well as for the parents. If this was to go to an inspector with a refusal, and the inspector is going to consider that they already have planning consent for 30 kids. And the question that he's going to raise is what additional harm is being caused by the extra 30 kids, and whether the mitigation that's being proposed is adequate or not. Now, the mitigation being proposed is 5 parking spaces for drop-off. We had a similar item with a school in the measures application, where we had not the pupil numbers were in hundreds, right? and we had similar ratios of parking for drop-off. I'm also conscious that on Rickmansworth Road there is unrestricted parking, and the carriageway is wide enough to accommodate car parking as well as free flow of traffic, up to a point where there's the next right-hand lane where it started reducing. I think, bearing in mind these three things, I don't think we would really be able to defend this at an appeal.
I note the comment. Councillor Higgins?
Firstly, a travel park, how would we enforce it? That would be my first objection to it. The highway, Rickmansworth, doesn't... if you go further up where Northwood School is, they park on both sides of the road, and it causes enormous problems in the morning. And it restricts the flow of traffic as it is. And that road, it's not relevant to bring in other applications, because I could then bring in the other application that we refused because of traffic reasons, where that was coned off at the corner further up Rickmansworth Road. So I'm not going to go down that.
I would also reference, with regard to the highways comments we had a moment ago, the site that Majors considered earlier was not on a dangerous junction.
Exactly.
It was up.
Exactly.
It was up straight.
So, I think it should be refused, but if our hands are tied, then I would ask for a traffic survey to be done on that junction at those times of operation, not when it's in summer holidays or half term or anything like that. So,
in terms of our hands being tied, the officer is saying that he doesn't necessarily believe we can win an appeal. If this committee feels, and we can demonstrate to satisfaction of the officer we have grounds for overturning, and highway safety does represent those, it may or may not be held up at appeal. We have the right to do just that. And that becomes our decision. The argument from the highways officer is that the mitigation is sufficient to accommodate the additional 30. It then does come down to how members feel whether that's the case or not. And then that's then down to an appeal inspector if he wants to review that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just for thought, we agreed to this being up to 60. What's to stop the applicant coming back in 3 months, 12 months' time, saying we want it as 120? Because again, that's what we're doing. We're just increasing it by 100%. This junction is extremely dangerous as it is. We're going to have 30 children coming. We've got 30 children coming in supposedly soon. We're now going to be looking at perhaps being 60 children. And there's only one exit, and that's out onto Green Lanes, where you've got queues of traffic waiting to turn left onto Rickmansworth Road. It's not feasible.
No, all the traffic is coming in and out on the one on Green Lane. So that's where you got. That's where you are. That's a good bear man. Councillor Nelson, sorry.
When the agreement was done for the 30 children, when they were submitting the plan, surely they would have known that. I heard what you said, that it was an error in regards to the figure being put. But surely when they were submitting the plan, they had an idea of how much can be brought into the building at the time. So why was the change now from 30 when they got the agreement now to 60?
Oh, the applicant is saying an error was made by their agent. Now, we have to accept that at face value, that an error was made when the paperwork was prepared. Now, it's not for us to, that's what the head of planning is telling us. That's what he has been told. That is as much as information as we're going to get on it. So it is what it is. The reality is we went with 30. The applicant is now back to double that effectively. We had a view at 30 that we were just about there. We were okay. At 60, people are balking. And that's where we are. How we got to 60 doesn't really matter. We've got to consider what's before us tonight, but The material consideration is that 30 is already approved, and we can't go backwards from that. We've got to look from forward. Right, I'm going to move this on in a minute, but Councillor Gish, do you want to add something to it?
Just in regards to sort of that comment there about coming in and out, how wide is the entrance? Basically, can two cars pass each other as they're going?
Good question.
I think I'll have to look at the plans to confirm that, but my feeling is that they can't.
They can't.
But
so, if I take the councillor's point slightly further forward, if somebody's trying to get out and can't get out onto Green Lane, and we all know that is somewhat difficult, somebody else trying to get in will therefore be queuing along with the traffic by the traffic lights? Yes? Yeah? Okay. Councillor Higgins.
And the other problem is they could actually turn off the Rickmans Road coming from Moore Park and then try and turn in as well across the street. Do a right turn, which could even cause even more problems with probabilities of accidents, because the corner there is a filter into northward, so everything on the left it just drives straight through. So.
An option, I will relay what the legal officer just said to me. I mean, obviously an option is to view this on site and see how we feel, but I think people feel strongly enough they know it without actually having to need to go there. Well, I was going to say, an awful lot of people know this rather well, I suspect. Okay, unless officers have anything more to add, I think I know. James, do you want to pick anything out? Do you want to...
thing I'd say that hasn't been mentioned thus far is that we have a draft travel plan. What we're saying is that is a head of term, therefore not seeking to agree it now. That would form part of the legal agreement. If members were comfortable to an extent with the officer recommendation, but wanted to see the actual finer details of the travel plan before they made a final decision, that's another option open to members to defer consideration so they see the full details of the travel plan. Although I have heard that members clearly have a number of concerns regarding this proposal.
Sorry, can I just come in?
Yeah, sure. I'm always welcome. Additional help at this point?
I think that what the head of planning has just suggested is actually very sensible. You've heard from our highways engineer that you have to look at the impact that's being caused by the 30 extra, and there's data, that informs basically what the position is. The amount, you've got to look, is it a de minimis amount of impact? And if the inspector finds that, if he finds that actually from 30 to 60, it's a de minimis impact, and in any event, even if it's not de minimis, we've got a travel plan, we're going to find it difficult to argue. I understand your highway safety point, I do, and I can hear that parking onto the highway at peak times is going to be an issue. So you have a reason for refusal. I do think you'll find it difficult to uphold that. So I think I think the head of planning's suggestion there is actually sensible. And if you felt that the travel plan, the details within that weren't sufficient to overcome the concerns that you have today, it can be brought back to committee and you can discuss that further.
Councillor Higgins, are you going to help me now?
I must have a legal brain somewhere. I didn't realise I had one.
But anyway, anyone's ever said that.
Exactly. But I did recommend earlier that we have a traffic survey done as well. Yeah, and I agree with the head of planning, because I think really if we are going to, things have changed, and I think if we are going to refuse something, we've got to make sure that we have covered all our bases. So I think that's a very good idea, but with the additional of the travel plan plus some traffic flow, I can't remember what you call it, but the technical term, whatever that is.
Is there time to get that done?
So the applicants already drafted a 29-page. Well, they're highway consultants. I should clarify. Professional highway consultants have drafted a 29-page travel plan. We know there's some corrections required to that, but I think that could quickly be turned around and it'd be possibly to bring something back to the next planning committee that cross-references a more advanced version of that document. What I would say is that may then make it that might create a scenario where the impacts of 60 children are mitigated to such an extent that is more difficult for members to overturn the officer recommendation, although obviously that would be positive planning were that the outcome.
We're not here just to oppose things just because we have a whim or a thing. So my view is that, as I said before, if we cover all our bases, regardless whether that's in favour or not in favour for us, that's totally irrelevant. I mean, I think there's two issues here, isn't there? There's the distance of the actual access has to be able to take 2 cars in and out. We also have to make sure that there is no right turn coming off Rickmansworth Road, then into Green Lane and then turning right. So there's another issue there. So, I mean, if those can all be done by the next meeting, I don't think members would have a problem really, but that's up to members. So.
Okay. Councillor Cash wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I was just wondering, since you are going to take it back now and it's going to be relooked, may do, sorry, my apologies. Would there be any chance they can create a drive-through rather than, having to turn back and use the same exit?
I'm not sure drive-through, but at the moment the plans are annotated to say the existing gates and gate pillars are retained in situ. And so what I do think, if we defer, is that we need to decide whether the gates and gate piers need to be altered, and that's definitely something I think should have been included, should members be minded to defer.
Well,
I'm not sure about...
well, okay, let's leave both suggestions on the table. I think the request to Highways would be to look at that car parking arrangement again, because members would have concerns, certainly if that's one in, one out, that's going to work at all. So I think let's have a look at that. Let's officers go back and have a look at that. And then, would it work better with another entrance? I don't know. I mean, that's not for us to but it's, again, a sensible thing to look at. Councillor Flynn, and then I'm going to move this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we are going down the route of deferral, I think it was you mentioned earlier about the possibility of trying to have some sort of compromise on the numbers. It does seem to me quite a lot of the strength of opposition on this stems from the increase, 100% increase in the numbers, and I don't really think 100% increase is necessarily a de minimis figure. So would it be possible to have some conversation with the applicant around possibly sort of meeting them halfway in terms of numbers if we are having a deferral?
I now understand why the applicant has applied for 60, because that's what they've got. That's what they've got at Weatherby House. Officers can take away from this committee any recommendations committee might have, but whether we'd be able to seek I think the 2 points that I've cross-referenced, a complete travel plan and looking at the gates, I think are things we could go away, and I'm sure we could reach an outcome on with the applicant. There was a point raised about a further aspect of transport assessment that we haven't, that I think the highway engineer should comment on.
Yeah. I think Councillor Higgins was asking for traffic surveys.
Yeah.
Now the issue,
sorry to interrupt you, but or something to make sure that the traffic is not turning right, coming off Rickmansworth Road into the site. Yeah. That's, I think. Just another point while I'm speaking, actually, is this house a special character? Because I have a funny feeling it is. And is the wall part of that as well? So, I mean, it's just something to throw in there. Right.
Can I take the highway officer's comments, and then I'm going to, I think
traffic surveys are normally carried out if there's a capacity issue, and there isn't a capacity issue here. In terms of the trip generation on the highway network.
Sorry, I was losing.
Not capacity of the pupil intake. So I don't think the traffic surveys would achieve anything. And the other measures in relation to the safety issues, you can only get a certain number of cars when you get a green light in any direction. So the safety issues that you're pointing out are valid. vehicles turning right into or vehicles turning right out of the access?
No, it's more the flow that comes from Moore Park, because there's a filter on that traffic light.
Can we, microphone,
Sorry.
please.
The issue is coming down from Moore Park from the hospital, there is a filter that filters into Green Lane, that when the lights go green, the traffic just flows all the way through. It splits into two lanes. One goes straight off and the other just goes straight in. Now, if that is flowing and then someone decides to stop just on the corner to turn into this, it's going to cause a lot of problems. And I'm sure that, we did a housing development, we had a traffic survey done on it.
What, on Rickman's Road?
No, on Green Lane. It was further up in front of the church school, whatever it is. Yeah, I think we had one when they wanted to build new houses. We had, which is less of a traffic issue than something like this. So, that's
okay. Obviously, the highway engineer is guiding that the traffic survey is probably not going to assist us. I think one thing that might assist us, though, would be current accident data on this corner and junction, because that might well assist our deliberations. I think we would ask for the comments around the turning and the junction to be noted to come back. I think we will ask for the access and whether it's two-way and whether there's more space to be noted. I think it's also worthwhile officers are in conversation. I accept that the existing is 60, but it is in another location. They're asking to come to a different location and double what they've got permission for. So I think that conversation's worth having, even if it comes back as it won't work for us. At least we know where we are. I think, if I sense the mood correctly, members are taking the guidance of the legal officer and would be happy to defer this for enable some more information to come forward around the travel and highway issues. Am I right? Yeah. You move that. Seconded. All those in favour of deferral, please clearly show. Thank you. That one's deferred. Thank you. Right. 12's gone. I get to 13, which is 3 Pembroke Road. The applicant's looking slightly puzzled. I've got to be honest, I can't do a debate on it. All I will say to you is that before you came in, before we got to the decision we've just got to, this was heading towards you being refused. So I would suggest that where we are now is a reasonable outcome, because the mood around the table was very much it was going to be sent back. So. 13 3 Pembroke Road.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to 3 Pembroke Road, which is a detached 3-storey building. This building was extensively remodelled and extended to provide offices at ground floor level with residential accommodation in the form of 6 flats above, following the grant of planning permission in 2011. The building is situated on the north side of Pembroke Road and is located within the Ruislip Town Centre and the Ruislip Village Conservation Area. The application has been referred to committee. The proposal is for the conversion of the existing roof space to provide one-bed flat. The application has been referred to committee for decision because it's been called in by a ward councillor. The proposed external alterations to the existing building are minimal and would have no impact on the character of the wider conservation area. They consist mainly of just roof lights. The potential impact of the proposal on neighbouring properties has been assessed and considered acceptable. The proposal exceeds the nationally prescribed floor space standards. The proposal does, though, rely entirely on roof lights for light, ventilation and outlook, which would not normally be considered acceptable due to limited outlook normally afforded from traditional roof lights. However, in this particular case, the relative steepness, and if I get to a cross-section that might help, there. So that's the roof space in question. So you can see the roofs are relatively steep. So this plan shows there's the bedroom is located there. The open area living space, which is kitchen and living room, is located there with the bathroom there, and that's the access there. So those roof lights will be obscured, but that's only to the stair coming up. because of the steepness of the roof and the position of the roof lights on the roof, it does afford more outlook than you would get from a lot of roof lights. So, given that the floor space exceeds normal standards, we feel that the roof lights in this case, well, maybe not ideal, are adequate. I would point out, if I go to the site plan, there's better photos actually. If I go here, so that's a neighbouring building at 157 to 161 on the high street. You see there's a dormer there. The bedroom window would be in the roof elevation facing towards that building. However, it's a story above that. Maybe gives a false impression. So because where it is on the roof slope and the position of the dormer, we feel there's no direct overlooking, so we don't think that's necessarily an issue. So for those reasons, we are recommending approval. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to kick this one off before anybody else does. I'm just going to start with this. So we've got roof lights, which are not normally acceptable. We're arguing they are acceptable because of the steepness of the roof. If you go back a photo, so that roof light on the bedroom looks out at a roof, at best.
At the back, yes.
Yeah, so the bedroom outlook is onto the adjacent roof, and I know this one extremely well, so I set those traffic lights every morning of the week. Those two buildings are pretty close together. They are, they are just about apart. Now, at the other end, your living room will look out onto the side wall of that building.
Well, those ones are, the proposed roof lights on that side are obscured because obviously that's got permission, it haven't already been converted to resi, so...
Hang on, so those are the living room ones?
Yeah, but there's two on the front as well that also provide an outlook and daylight and outlook.
Yeah, but hang on that roof, so the outlook is going to be looking up at the sky somewhere...
Although you will see, your head there would be level with it, so obviously it's on a slant, so it's not...
Okay, all right. I think I probably asked. Go, Councillor Higgins.
So, are they going to be able to be opened?
Where there's a requirement for them to be obscured, then they'll be fixed and obscured. But the non-obscured ones, they can be openable.
So, if they were open, then you'd bang your head if you went towards the window, then, wouldn't you? Because they wouldn't be high enough. They'd come down, wouldn't they?
Flip it.
I mean, but the other thing is can you give me the dimensions of the actual habitable space upstairs?
Yes.
They're in the addendum, I think.
Yeah. I haven't got my glasses.
So Mr. Chairman, the London guidelines, I've talked about lighting issues before from it, but if you look at the London guidelines on this, it expects a minimum height of 2.5. This is below that, and it's only 80% of the room reaches 2488 or whatever it is, and the guidelines clearly indicate, and I'll read them out, a medium floor to ceiling height of 2.6 in habitable rooms is considered desirable. I actually take the view that this is not reaching those standards.
No. Officer comment?
Well,
thank you for that, Councillor.
The nationally prescribed limits are 2.3, and it says that so the minimum floor space standard for a one bed is 50 square metres. 75% of that floor space has to achieve the minimum nationally prescribed minimum 2.3.
Don't we normally work to London planning standards?
London plan has a aspiration to 2.5.
Okay, so we're saying achieve national. Yeah, achieve national. There's too many microphones on. Councillor Higgins.
Sorry, right.
So it achieves national, but it doesn't achieve what would be desirable under the London plan. Okay, so I'm just getting clarity in my head, and I think others need that in their heads. Any other commentary on this one, Councillor Morgan? Councillor Morgan.
Sorry, I do have issues with just roof lights as your only form of lighting. Nothing beats looking out of a proper window, be it in your bedroom, living room, wherever it may be. And to just purely rely on roof lights. I'm sorry, guys.
Councillor Casher.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know this place, I haven't seen it, but looking at it, I believe it must have already had a roof extension in there,
What you're looking
Yeah.
at is effectively a new building.
Building, yeah.
That was put up. We granted permission for it, so that form you see now is relatively new. Was built behind. That was vacant before that. Effectively, was some old buildings on it.
Now we want to go another story, right?
Put a story in the roof, effectively. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So my concern again is, one is very close to the next door building, right? And as much as we're saying we're going to have light from the top somewhere, the light is going to be an issue, I believe, unless you can show me differently or tell me differently.
To explain, James, are you going to help us or hinder us or do something with this?
I can assist members with further information, but it doesn't necessarily help the approval recommendation. I had printed something off ahead of the meeting in case there was a cross-reference to the mayoral standards on this application, which I think is which has happened. If I read out the following bit of text, it's probably not going to help the approval recommendation. So, paragraph 2.3.44. There's about 7 lines to this, but I'll read it out. It says, Table 3.3 of the minor alterations recognises that ceiling heights are an important element in the design of a dwelling in the unique circumstances of London. They can help offset issues associated with its distinctly high densities and effects of climate change by positively impacting on how spacious, light and comfortable the dwelling is. High ceilings can improve the amount and quality of natural light and ventilation and provide flexibility in the use of a room. Therefore, ceiling height of 2.5 metres is strongly encouraged in London. So what this development does is it fully complies with the national standard of 2, but not the London plan standard of 2.5. I appreciate I have not helped the officer recommendation.
No, you haven't helped the officer recommendation, James, at all. Right, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Judicia, and I'll move this to the vote.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share the concerns actually of various councillors on both sides of the room here. It doesn't strike me as a sort of property which we should really be encouraging in the borough. My question is to the officers is there any precedent in this surrounding area of roof lights such as this? Because if we are going to refuse it, are we going to be hit with any sort of
precedents in terms of?
Are there any similar conversions
in the roof
in the area, where someone can point to the fact they've done it over the road and or anything like that? Or is there some precedent?
Because the London Plan housing standards are very recent, I think the answer is probably since these were published, no, which would be the key bit, because obviously if you go far enough back there could be something, but you'd be able to counter argue it's not relevant.
You can't find the debate.
I can't find the debate. I'm trying to, and also a question of associated amenity space. Can someone tell me what that is as well? No, it doesn't say the actual dimensions.
Amenity is, as you might guess,
the bathroom.
Yeah, and that's about it. Councillor Juicy?
I would like to get this moving a little bit, so I'm going to throw it out there for a potential refusal. I wanted to see.
I think you're heading in the same direction as most other people.
Well, let's see what we do.
Right, refusal on grounds. Before we do refusals, as you well know, we need to make sure our grounds are robust, and my colleague will at least nod, if not supportively, without throwing me a dirty look.
The point of me having this piece of paper is that it might be appropriate for Manman to argue why he was uncomfortable on an earlier item with the refusal reason. I'm not going to do the same on this one.
Okay, I would suggest that this item be refused because it creates unacceptable, the wording we can refine in a moment, but unacceptable living conditions by virtue of the lack of lighting, in other words, no windows, and the lack of height, which fails to comply with the London Plan standards. Does that pick up members' concerns?
The only other point I'll add, this is regarded under London Plan as priority 1. They grade them. Yeah. The lighting issue is priority 2.
Well, so got the height. Yep. Councillor Cashwood, are you
just very briefly before I'll second that. No problem. Just that it's good though. The point just been made. There's no precedent, and it looks like sort of it'll be the first one in there. And if we allow this one, then we're setting precedent. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all fairly clear. It's been recommended for overturn and refusal for the grounds the precise wording of that will be formed up. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Unanimously refused. I go to 14, which is advertising at the Water's Edge, Reservoir Road, Rice Slip.
Thank you, Chair.
Which is the Rice Slip Lido for
the Water's Edge is a locally listed public house located on the western side of Rice Slip Lido. Site is in the green belt. Advertisement consent is sought for replacement of existing advertising. Main considerations: impact on public safety and the impact on the visual amenity of the locally listed building and the surrounding green belt. Following discussions with officers, the amount of signage originally proposed has been reduced and is now considered acceptable. That is examples of some of the signage that were proposed there. It's basically an overhaul of all their existing signage. So the recommendation is to approve advertisement consent subject to the standard advert conditions set out in the report.
We're only improving the advertising. We're not improving, changing the whole colour palette, are we?
Adverts only. Yeah.
Adverts only. Right. Councillor Higgins.
Just go with officer's recommendation.
Seconder, please. All those in favour, please clearly show. Yep, that one's approved. Thank you. I move to item 15, which is 178182 High Street, Rice. Not very far from where we were a moment ago. In fact, the other side of the junction.
Different recommendation on this one. This application on site, the application site comprises a Part 2 3-storey end of terrace building which is currently in use as a furniture shop located at the southern end of the on the western side of the High Street. It's located within the conservation area and the primary shopping area of the town centre. The scheme proposes to erect a first and second floor extension to the rear of the premises. So that's existing. It's not the clearest of plans, but so Part 2 storey building extension on the back. The scheme and then convert the roof space to habitable use with the inclusion of dormer windows. The proposal is considered to be a large and visually intrusive addition which fails to respect the character appearance of the building and the wider conservation area. It also fails to achieve suitable living conditions for future occupiers. It's therefore recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the report.
I've got a forest. Go on, Councillor. Do you want to go with it?
Yeah, I want to move officers' recommendations.
Thank you. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you. That one's refused. Right. I now move to. Can I ask you please to note item 16, the S106? Can I please ask for the record